The winter of 1943 clawed at the Eastern Front with a merciless grip. Snow draped the dead like burial shrouds, while the living trudged through frozen mud, their boots caked in ice and blood. Private Mikhail Petrov tightened his grip on his Mosin-Nagant rifle, his fingers numb even beneath the woolen gloves. Around him, the remnants of the 3rd Infantry Division huddled in the ruins of what had once been a village, now reduced to charred beams and shattered stone. The enemy was out there, beyond the skeletal trees that stood like grave markers against the pale sky. The Germans had pushed hard through the night, forcing them into this last defensible position. If reinforcements didn't arrive soon, they were as good as dead. Sergeant Yuri Sokolov crouched beside Mikhail, his breath visible in the frigid air. "They'll come at dawn," he muttered, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. Mikhail swallowed, trying to ignore the gnawing hunger in his stomach. His unit had barely eaten in 2 days. Supplies were thin, and the war showed no mercy for the weak. "I won't let them take this village," Mikhail said, though his voice lacked the conviction he wished to have. Yuri glanced at him and nodded. "None of U.S. will." A distant rumble echoed across the wasteland. The ground trembled beneath them. Tanks. The Germans were coming. The onslaught. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the enemy launched their assault. The crack of rifles and the thunder of artillery shattered the fragile silence. Mikhail fired into the advancing ranks, watching figures crumple in the snow. But the Germans kept coming, their gray uniforms blending into the fog. A panzer rolled forward, its turret swiveling toward their position. "Incoming!" Yuri shouted. Mikhail barely had time to throw himself to the ground before an explosion ripped through their barricade. Wood and stone rained down, and a deafening ringing filled his ears. Through the smoke, he saw Yuri struggling to rise, blood trickling down his temple. A German soldier charged toward them, bayonet fixed. Mikhail raised his rifle and fired. The man collapsed, his blood staining the snow. More enemies swarmed into the village. It was chaos. Gunfire, screams, the acrid smell of burning flesh. Then the horn. Reinforcements. From the east, Soviet reinforcements surged forward, their red banners catching the morning light. 34 tanks rolled across the frozen ground, shells bursting among the enemy ranks. A ragged cheer rose from Mikhail's unit as their comrades charged in. Yuri, now standing despite his wound, clapped Mikhail on the shoulder. "We hold, brother." With renewed strength, Mikhail reloaded and joined the counterattack. He no longer felt the cold. Only the fire of battle burned within him. The war was far from over, but for now, they had won. Aftermath and pursuit. The Germans, caught off guard by the Soviet reinforcements, began to retreat, but the Red Army did not allow them an easy escape. T-34s pushed forward, crushing enemy bodies beneath their treads, while Soviet soldiers advanced through the burning ruins, cutting down those who remained. Mikhail reloaded his rifle and moved alongside Yuri, stepping over the corpses of fallen comrades and enemies alike. He spotted a group of Germans scrambling for cover behind a wrecked half-track. He raised his rifle and fired. One man fell. The others disappeared into the smoke. "Advance! Don't let them regroup," a lieutenant bellowed from behind them. Mikhail and Yuri pressed on, following the rest of their unit as they pushed the enemy deeper into the forest. The scent of pine mixed with the stink of gunpowder and death. The trees provided cover, but they also concealed the enemy. Shots rang out from the darkness. A Soviet soldier ahead of Mikhail collapsed, clutching his chest. Another fell to his knees, gurgling on his own blood. "Snipers!" Yuri shouted. "Keep moving! Zigzag!" Mikhail dashed behind a fallen tree as bullets snapped past him. His breath came in quick gasps. He peeked over the log and spotted a glint of metal in the branches above. A German sniper. Carefully, Mikhail steadied his rifle and took aim. The sniper didn't see him. He was focused on another target. Mikhail exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck the sniper in the neck, and he tumbled from his perch, landing in the snow with a dull thud. "Good shot," Yuri called. The battle in the forest raged for another hour, but the Soviets had the advantage. The Germans were demoralized and outnumbered. By midday, the last of them had either been killed or captured. A moment of silence. As the gunfire faded, Mikhail took a moment to breathe. His hands were shaking, but not from the cold. He looked around at the bodies sprawled across the snow, their faces frozen in expressions of agony. Yuri sat beside him, wiping the blood from his brow. "We did it," he said, though there was no joy in his voice. "At least for now." Mikhail nodded. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled photograph of his family. His mother, father, and little sister back in Moscow. He hadn't seen them in 2 years. He wondered if he ever would again. "War takes everything," he murmured. Yuri sighed. "Yes, but we keep fighting. For them. For everyone back home." A new mission. Before the soldiers could rest, a Soviet officer approached, his uniform dusted with snow and grime. "Comrades," he called, his voice firm, "we have orders. The enemy has regrouped further west. We push forward. Now." Groans of exhaustion rippled through the men, but they knew they had no choice. The war would not wait for them to catch their breath. Mikhail exchanged a weary glance with Yuri before tightening his grip on his rifle. They had survived one battle, but the war continued. There was no turning back. Through the dense forest, the Soviets moved forward once more, determined to finish what had begun. The fight was far from over.